Welcome to Consistently Hashing with Gaurav. Okay, now we will add the. So we have already added the models and all the associated logic around it, right? So now we will go ahead and we'll add the controller logic. So what does a controller actually look like? All right. It's a it's a function which is called whenever a specific route or a specific path is hit, right? So that's what a controller is. So let's create. Did we create a controller folder already? Yeah, we did. So let's. For controllers, we'll try to kind of create separate files for different for the different objects that we have because the code is actually slightly more bloated compared to the models. So let's create a blogs controller.go, and we'll start off with that. And awesome. So if we go back to server.go, right, the one, so we had introduced a ping function, and this is a very basic route and action definition, and we could define it here as well. But I don't like to convolute. Like I said, like I mean, this is the base class from where everything is starting off. So I don't want to convolute this a lot. So what I'll do is I'll create a routes.go file, and let's go to routes.go. This is in the same server package, and just say setup routes. I think that can just return error because so that if something happens, we can always track it. This is the controllers file. I'll just close it for now. I'll close this as well for now. And awesome. So I want to move this. Wait, before that, I'll just do this. So dot API, not setup routes, and then return, right? And I want to move this to the method because I don't want to. Awesome. So if you look at this, so this already looks way better, and also I want to check if there's some error when auto migrating as well, because if you don't return the error, I mean it's not good, right? And a little linting things. Usually I have all these things auto fixable, but in this case I'm doing it manually. Cool. So we already have the ping handler, and I don't like the fact that we are defining the route, and we also have the handler again in the same page. So what I'll do is I'll just create a pong handler for now. Because this is looking a little bit convoluted, right? So I'll just say pong handler. Awesome. So let's see if our code compiles. Yes, it does. Awesome. So now coming back to the controller section, right? So we have to define the routes that we are interested in, right? So you already have an example for ping. Now I want to define APIs, right? And so I usually try to have good demarcation between between different kinds of routes. So what I'll do is, so if you go to the Gin code, right, there's something called router group. I think I may have to go to the. Let's go to the grouping routes. Okay, so there's something called router group which Gin provides. What it does is it helps you to group few routes together Why this is helpful is because you don't need to define the entire route every time, and if you have certain middlewares, for example, we will define the authentication middleware as well in the future, right? So if you have those middlewares, you don't need to individually add those middlewares to everything. So this makes everything way simpler. So let me just copy this for now. We'll of course have to change it, but that's fine. Is a formatting issue. Awesome. So this should work now. Okay. So V1, right? Do I need to change? Do I want to change the name? Yes, I do. So let me just make it API group, and I'll just call this API, right? And so we already have and there's no router, so it's serve.api engine.group, right? And cool. And I also want to define a blog group. So this will be something which uses the API group that we defined just on top, and let's see if this works. Right, and blog group. Awesome. So if you look at the API, right, so we have ping, which is fine because this was there from before, but for the blog, it is concatenating all the URL prefixes for the parent routes as well. So in this case, so now I want to define the CRUD APIs as well. So let me just define them. Let me define them. So this is the index call. This is the get show call. Then this is the create call, and then we have update again, and then I don't want patch, so I'll just use it for delete. Right? Let's see the routes again. Cool. So these are the routes that we actually want, right? And let's create a similar group for users as well, because users of course will have similar routes. Of course users will have a few more routes as well, but that's fine. Or should we do it for comments? Let's do it for comments. Now comments are not child level, are not a root level entity, right? So comments exist only in the context of blogs. So we will do it this way. So I'll create a comment group, and this will nest from there, and comments. And let me call it blogs because that's what the nomenclature should be. Let's see what the routes are now. Awesome. So this is exactly what we needed, right? And we also need something similar for users. So we'll just create that as well. Okay. Yes. So one thing you may have noticed, okay, by the way, so these are the routes that I think we will need more or less. Of course, for users, we'll have login, logout, a few other routes as well. But these are the basic routes that we will need anyways, right? And you may have noticed that that all of them have the same handler, the Pong handler. Of course, this is going to change because it wouldn't work, right? If all the APIs in a system just keep returning Pong. But we will fix that. But for now, these are the routes that we have. Now what we'll do is we'll try to implement the routes one by one, and then we will slowly start replacing. So since we have the blogs controller already ready, right? Let's try defining this. If you're another thing that I want to bring, that I want to talk about here, right, is that all the methods that you see here are kind of wait. Yeah, so what I was saying is that all the we'll define all the routes in the blocks controller. If you remember, we had a separate package for the controllers, right? To keep it more manageable, what I'll do is I'm going to delete this file and I'm going to create a controls file in the server module itself, because I don't have a controller object right now, and it usually that's what I do. I create a controller object and then I have other child nested objects, which is very similar to how Rails and Laravel and on all the other API frameworks work. But I think that's going to be too much of an overkill for this app. So I'll kind of delete this, and I will remove the controllers file, and then I'll just do it here, logs controller.go. Yeah, and I'll just logs controller. Yeah, so now it's in the same package. So and why did I do that, right? Another reason for doing that is because I wanted access to the server object, right? This server object that we get in the pointer receiver. I wanted access to that because there's already a lot of things that we have here, and I didn't want to overcomplicate that too much. So let me create the blog, the action handlers, right? This is the kind of naming I follow. I mean, it's fine if you want to pick something else, but that's what I follow. So blog index. Handler, show handler, and delete handler, and just return 200 without edge. I'm going to return as a success. I know this is counterintuitive. I know that the status code alone is sufficient to return the API status. But it's okay, I need something to fill in the data for now, so I'm just returning this. Maybe we remove it later on. That's fine. You don't have to be right. You don't have to do everything by book. Be a rebel. Okay, so we'll go back to the routes page and we'll replace it with let's ensure that everything is set up properly and it cannot identify. Oh, sorry, because it's all in the context of serve, right? Beautiful. And you can see that that for the blog routes, these has also been updated to the right indexes. Okay, now is the time to implement the controller. Let me start sharing my screen again. Cool. So this is where we last left off, and we will try to implement all the interfaces or all the action handlers in this section. Right. So blog index handler is quite simple. It has to basically fetch all the blogs that are available in the DB. Now if you write bare bone SQL queries, your query will look something like this. right? And you can also add pagination and other stuff here, but right now we don't want to, because we're already using an ORM. What we will be doing is, we'll be using the blog model that we already have. Let's go there. We have the blog model here, right? So we'll use this to kind of fetch the data entry from the SQLite database. So what GORM does, that is that it will fetch the data from SQLite, and then it will kind of input that data into the input. It will kind of insert the data into the blog struct, right? So what we will do, going back to the controller, is blog. Yeah. So so we need to have something. We need to have a blogs array, and we also need to define error. And so DB. So DB is the GORM.db object. If you want, you can just just go to the object itself. So it's a GORM.db object, and we'll just do blogs, and I want to check if there's a error or not. And if there is an error, what I want to do is I don't want to return from here. I want to also return a status code of 500 because it's a server error, and maybe I will also put in the reason for the error as well. So usually we should not expose these kind of data to the front end, because this may reveal some kind of private data that you don't want to reveal to the user. But in this case, because it's a custom app, it's a trial app, we don't need to worry as much. So let's let's also create the blog create handler as well, so that we can see the data directly as well. So what we'll do is, so we create blog one by one, right? So I don't need an array of objects here. I just need one object that I want to return here, and in the data I will return blog. Or should I just return blog? I think I should just return blog. That sounds better. Usually what I do is I have a fixed response structure, because there's some things like metadata that you want to kind of pass in anyways, right? And then we have the data objects, and you cannot pass in everything in the response HTTP response header, all the metadata. So for example, if I have version, or if I have something like the task ID or something, which is not directly correlated to the data that we are trying to create, and then I have data separately here. Let me do it this way. Let me kind of have data here, so that we can replicate the same information in the other controllers as well. Now so ideally this is a place where you have to do something like create table, and then you have to put values, blogs, and then you have to put values, and then so that's usually what you have to do. But GORM makes it very easy for us. So what we should do is, so first of all, we need to translate the JSON inputted request, and I think I already mentioned that we are going to treat everything as a JSON input and a JSON output, right? So that's the content type that we are kind of expecting here, right? So there's something called so Gin already provides us something called should bind create JSON, and that's why I like Gin quite a bit, because it does a lot of the handiwork for you already. So let's see if this works. See the should. Is there something should bind? Let me just take a quick look. Should bind JSON. No. Should bind JSON. Should bind JSON. Yeah. So this is there. I don't know why it's not showing up here, but yeah. But this is what we need to do. So in the previous this error, you saw that we're returning 500, but if the JSON body itself is wrong, and that is what should byte JSON does, it kind of translates the JSON in the JSON request from the body that you have received, and it translates it into the blog object which is there, right? So now if it's unable to do the translation, that means there's some problem with your client. So what we'll do is we'll return 400 instead of returning 500, and we'll also just return the error as it is, because we don't want to filter the data here right now. And one more thing is, every action can only return one JSON or one response, right? So if I don't have the return here, and it kind of moves on to the next statement, so what will happen is it will first try to return 400, and then it will say there's also 200. So I think what it does is it returns the first element, the first response, which is, again, it may be right, it may be wrong, but we should not kind of even let it go to that stage. So what I do is I just do a return here, and it's good to return early whenever you can. So this is there. Now let's implement the show handler. I'll move the show handler on top, because that's how I like to kind of keep it structured. Now, how does show work, right? Show basically means that you'll be given an ID. You'll be given an ID of the object that you want to fetch from the DB, and then you have to use that ID and fetch it from the database. So the first task that we have to do here is to kind of figure out what the ID object here is from the URL. So in order to do that, what we'll do is we need the blog ID, right? And by default, what happens is all elements are when you are fetching data from the string from the URL, everything is in a string format. So I think this is the syntax. We'll cross check now in some time, but I think this is a syntax, right? Cool. Yeah, this is a syntax. It takes in key, and you can also see some examples here, and you also see the route. Awesome. Is an error somewhere? Okay. Cool. So you have the blog ID string, and now what I want to do is, because the internal representation is a integer, right? It's not a string. So the ID of the blog. So we have to convert it. So I'll just use blog ID as uint, and then I'll say if blog ID error strconf. This is a pretty simple way to convert string to integer here, and we'll pass in blog ID string. And if I don't have the object here, that means it's a client error. So I'll just return 400 as we did above. And okay, so now we have the blog ID. So I want to use the blog ID to fetch from the database. So I also need to have a blog definition that we need to pass. So what we'll do is okay, so we'll do there equal to where and first, right? So this, and then I kind of close this and turn listen 500. I just still pass in the data as the blog. Oh, sorry, this is an error one, right? Let me pass it here, and this will be message will be error. So now what should be there in the where? So this is very similar to the where clause. So if you were firing a SQL query, it will be select all from blogs where ID equal to some ID, right? So this is the SQL query. So we'll have very similar logic here. ID equal to that. Actually, Gorm already gives us a free hand to kind of fetch by ID. So I don't need to do that as well. I can just do first. Let me just check the first object. Yes. So first, it by itself takes in the condition as well. So what I'll do is I'll just say ID 1. Oh, sorry, ID equal to blog ID, and we can just cross check. Yeah, so okay, it's even more simpler than that. So I don't even need to pass in the ID, so because it already takes in as the first hand. So yep, so this will do basically what I have on line number 40, what the SQL statement does, and if it's able to fetch the blog, it'll return the blog, right? Cool. Now let's implement the update handler. The update handler is a mix of the show handler and the create handler. So let's first, because this also passes in the JSON request body. So we are passing it here, and I don't want to have this here. And then what it does is we also need this. So let's do this as well. Cool. So now we have the ID of the blog, and then we have the object of the blog. So what we'll do is let's go here and find updates. I think this will be in the update section. Cool. So what we'll do is we also need to fetch the object, the blog show, and so we'll do that. We'll fetch the blog ID, blog information as well, and then so we need to have two blog objects here. So one is the actual blog object, and one is the request blog object. So let me add that. Blog, and this is the place where this is the update request body, right? So that's what we need to bind the JSON with, and then we are actually fetching this. And now what we need to do is if error equal to db serve.db model, and what's the model that we have? Blog, right? This is the actual model that we already have in the database, and we need to update this with what we have received already, right? So yep, so if we are able to do this, let me just confirm that this is what we need to do. Updates. Yeah, so this is the example that we are following. We have user, and since ours is already a pointer, so we don't need to have the ampersand here, and this is exactly what we are receiving from the should bind JSON as well. So ours is, well, our code becomes way more simpler, and anything that I missed looks okay. And at the end we will implement the delete handler, right? So delete is a mixture of show and update actually. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this entire thing. Awesome, I have the blog, and what I do is I just need to fetch the blog, and I need to do delete. I'll just take a look at the actual method. db.delete. That's quite simple, right? So I don't need to worry that much. and I don't need to do a because there's nothing to bind to, so we don't need that. We don't need this. And one thing that I missed was that blog, and also blog needs to be an actual blog, and request blog is already there, so I don't need to allow this to. Awesome. Let's see if it compiles. Too many errors. Oh yes, so because so here everywhere we are using blog, where however we don't have anything called blog, it's in the models repo, so we need to replace blog everywhere. So I'll list models and should be okay. And now we have a few other errors. So line number 34, blog ID was okay. That's because a new version of the blog was created, so that's why. Line 34 says it cannot use. Okay, I see. Okay, so let me make it end, and when I'm doing the query, I'll just make it end. All the type conversion errors. Cool. Now we have an error in new page 42, line number 42. Okay. Sorry. I need to. So, what first does it returns a DB object, and in the DB object you have an error field. So. So that's what I did. I just introduced error here. I think I made that issue in other places as well. So let me just fix it everywhere. Awesome. A lot of errors have decreased. Line number 81, what's the error here? Declared and not used, again because of this. So I removed it, now it should be fine. And then line number 99, there is a request body. Update handler, request body. What happened to our request body? No, it's not request body, it's request blog. And then we have line number 118 again. I think this is a similar error, so yeah, let me just remove this. Oops. Okay, so it does not. This is what happens when you copy paste code and you don't verify that it works properly. You have to fix it everywhere. 118. Awesome. So we have a compilable implementation of all the actions in the controller, and in a few minutes we will verify if it's working as expected or not. So awesome. Let's take a quick break.